Welcome to a very special breaking news episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, June 10th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 82 days, the game against Michigan in 173 days. There is news, and it is good news for Ohio State. Faheem Delane, a four-star top 50 safety, has now committed to Ohio State, ranked as the number 2 safety in the class of 2025, according to the 247 Composite. I'm joined by Marc Givler of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Mark, I think if you just look at number 2 safety in the class, that I think probably will be enough for most people to go, aha, seems like a pretty big deal. But man, this is another big addition to what is turning into an absolutely monster secondary recruiting class for the Buckeyes in 2025.
Yeah, and honestly, no disrespect to my Ohio guys, but and Dorian Brew's ranked very highly, Trey McNutt's ranked very highly. I think Faheem Delane's the best safety in the class nationally. I think he's a special talent. He can run, he can cover. He's very physical. He's got size and length. Great competitor. He really checks all the boxes. I've been super impressed. I've been able to see him a couple times, and I have been just extremely impressed with him every time I've seen him. This is a guy that really from day one has been a priority recruit for them. He's been on their radar for over a year now. And even with the transition from Perry Eliano to Matt Guerrieri, just kind of kept going, kept rolling with it, and were able to secure this one. I think we all expected them to get him at some point, but now that it's happened, you never know until you know with these things, and he's a national recruit. So big weight off the shoulders of the defensive coaching staff, because this was a guy I think they felt they needed to have.
Yeah, this is one that I think even maybe going back into last fall, we had been talking about this as maybe coming soon. You never know, and then you go through the transition from Eliano to Guerrieri, and that's always dicey when you go through a position coach change like that. But they did end up ultimately landing him. So would you have a sense for where he fits in terms of the Ohio State safety positions? Is he an adjuster, that deep safety kind of position? Is he a bandit, that boundary safety position? Where do you think they ultimately have him play for them?
I think he'll start at adjuster, but he's so versatile that he could play either safety position. Again, there's not a lot of weaknesses in his game. He can run and cover, he can hit. He's got size, so you're not worried about playing him, up toward the line of scrimmage. He's 6'2", 190 pounds. I like his range and playmaking ability, so I would put him as more of the free safety. But if we're going to talk about this great secondary class they have, if for some reason getting your best guys on the field would require him to play closer to the line of scrimmage, he can do that too.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about that great secondary class, because they've got Devin Sanchez, ranked as the number 1 corner in the 247 Composite. They've got Naeem Offord, ranked as the number 2 corner in the 247 Composite. They now have Faheem Delane, ranked as the number 2 safety in the 247 Composite. You've also got Cody Haddad, who's an in-state prospect, listed as an athlete, very likely going to end up at safety with the Buckeyes. You got Deshaun Stewart out of New Jersey. I mean, that's already, if those are the 5 guys they sign, that's already up there with the best secondary classes in Ohio State history. Am I off base on that?
No, I mean, the 5 they have right now are sensational. It would not shock me if Delane ended up a 5-star. He's kind of on the cusp. And obviously the 2 corners are special. Stewart's a very athletic kid with a lot of potential. Cody Haddad's had a great junior season. That's a kid that could maybe move up the rankings this fall. Kind of blew up after his junior season. It was a little later on the radar than some of the other guys. But just that alone puts them in the upper echelon of, you start talking about, like, I guess it was 2017 was the Okudah Wade class is kind of up there as one of the greatest ones in recent memory, and they've had some good ones recently as well with Tim Walton. So but for me, just the combination of playmakers at corner and safety in this class already makes it pretty special.
And then there's the matter of, hey, they might get a couple more of the really, really, really top players in this class in the secondary. Let's start with Dorian Brew. He's ranked as the number 5 cornerback in the Composite. He is an Ohio native, now down in Texas. So you'll look at him and think of him as a Texas prospect. He's really still kind of an Ohio prospect. He may or may not be a corner. We'll see if he's a corner or a safety at the next level. But, that is not exactly a reach to think that they might end up with him in the class too. I saw Devin Sanchez's dad, Daniel, who's sort of the unofficial parent recruiter of the class of 2025, tweeting at Dorian Brew like, "Hey, you better hurry up. The boat's filling up," basically.
Yeah, I still think they're in good shape with Dorian Brew. I know there's been some, unease with the fans on Dorian. I still think they're in fine shape there. That would be my prediction, is that he does end up at Ohio State. Opinions seem to vary on who the competition is, which actually I think bodes well for Ohio State. If everyone agrees that Ohio State's in his top two and no one can really agree on who the other school is, that seems to bode well for me. Even if you knew nothing else about this situation, would bode well for Ohio State. But I'm looking at Texas and LSU. I know some people think USC, but I would still pick Ohio State for Dorian Brew at this point.
So that would potentially, if they get him, give them the number 1, number 2, and number 5 corners in the 247 composite in the class. Mentioned earlier, they have now, with the commitment of Faheem Delane, the number 2 safety in the 247 composite. And the number 1 safety in the 247 composite is Trey McNutt, an Ohio State legacy. Certainly someone who is, an Ohio native, strongly considering Ohio State. There's been a little more scuttlebutt about him in other places as well, where it's now, no great certainty that he ends up as a Buckeye. Where do you have that one right now? How likely is it right now in your mind that they are at least the front runner right now, or do they maybe have some work to do there?
I think there's a little work to do there. The upcoming official is going to be important. I'm more confident that they get Brew at this point, but I'm not unconfident that they won't get McNutt. I just think that one's a bit tighter right now. He's made a lot of visits all over the country, and I know people have kind of wondered why this hasn't happened yet, and I think when he got offered, everyone assumed he was just going to commit early, and that didn't happen. And so you've got Georgia and Oregon. You've got some pretty big schools you're competing with right now. I still think, if you put a gun to my head right now, I would still take Ohio State there. But this one has tightened up, and I do think that official is going to be important. At the end of the day, though, he goes on these national visits, and he always seems to end up back at Ohio State for a visit after, he'll go on and go 2 or 3 places, and everyone goes into panic mode. Oh, they're losing him. They're slipping. And then he ends up back at Ohio State for a visit. So I still think they can get this done. But yeah, I think this took longer and has been tighter than people maybe anticipated it would be. And
they now have 14 commits right now, and the majority of them, this is a little bit of a class that's a little backwards from what they typically have. They normally, you normally see them loading up on wide receivers and quarterbacks, and it's a real offense heavy class early. This one has been a very defense heavy class early. In addition, all the secondary guys we talked about, they got Tarvos Alford, the top 100 linebacker out of Florida. You got Zahir Mathis, edge out of Philadelphia. You got London Merritt, an interior defensive lineman out of IMG. You got Eli Lee, a linebacker out of Ohio. Where else do they still have work to do on the defensive side of the ball? Because, even with 14 commits and a lot of them being on the defensive side of the ball, we have talked about this potentially being the biggest class they've taken in a number of years, because you're losing a lot of guys. You're under the 85 right now already. You're undoubtedly going to have some transfers here and there. So this is the potential to be a 28-ish guy class. Where else is there still work to do on the defensive side of the ball for 2025?
Yeah, obviously we just talked about the secondary with Brew and McNutt, and all I think attention is really going to focus on those guys kind of moving forward. I think they're going to really try and lock those guys down. They'd like to take another linebacker. I think they'd like that to be Riley Pettijohn. I think that's an Ohio State-Texas battle right now. I think the visit went well recently, but he's going to go back to Texas, and we just saw him on Southern Swing, and I kind of got a Texas vibe from him at that point. So we'll see if things can change here over the next couple of weeks as he digests all his visits. But yeah, they'd like to get another linebacker, and then they'd like to continue to load up on the defensive line. They've got a few defensive ends. They want to get more. They want to get Zion Grady. They want to get Malik Autry, the big-time defensive tackle out of Alabama. There's plenty of defensive line targets out there still that we're going to be talking about here this summer, and so they'd like to get a couple defensive tackles and at least one more defensive end. And then you've got Justin Hill, of course, who's kind of a hybrid outside linebacker defensive end, who is going to announce here July 3rd. So that could be interesting. Hill July 3rd and Zion Grady, the big-time defenseman out of Alabama, is July 4th. So that first week of July is going to be Very, very crucial to maybe how Ohio State finishes in that front four. And we'll see what happens that week. I like where they're at for Justin Hill. I think they've made some ground up with Zion Grady, and getting him back with Autry, the two Alabama guys, on the same weekend in 2 weeks will be critical. So there's still all three levels of the defense they're looking to add. They kind of missed some numbers like last year, and when you combine that with all these guys coming back and all they're going to lose to the NFL, I think they're in a situation where you just take as many as you can.
Yeah, it does feel like this is a load up class because there's a lot. All the guys that came back last year for one more ride, well, their one more ride will end after the season, and then you're losing a lot of talent to the NFL, and you can only make up so much of that in the portal. So yeah, probably going to be a big recruiting class. Possibly going to be some fireworks the first week of July for Ohio State in the recruiting world. Going to be a lot to talk about this next month and heading into the season at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's Tony, Kevin, and I covering the team. Mark covering recruiting at our whole team of X's and O's gurus. Really fun and active community on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. Lots of great exclusive content there for our members only. And of course, our annual membership sale wrapping up in just about a week, a little under a week. If you are a father, great thing to ask for your Father's Day gift. You don't need another tie. Get yourself an annual membership to BuckeyeHuddle.com. Save about 40% off of our typical annual price. It is going to be a very eventful and probably very fun year at BuckeyeHuddle.com as we cover the team and their race for a national championship and what could be a really potentially historic recruiting class. All of that and much, much more, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So sign up today, and if you are looking for a gift for dad, that is a great one. If you are a dad looking for a gift to be bought for you, that is also a great one. So we hope to see you there at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.